Welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Matt Podcast. Haven't done an episode in a while. Sort of been meaning to, just haven't gotten around to it yet. But back with a new episode here, right now, and it will be on Saliva. Yeah, Saliva just released a new album today, so I felt it was pretty perfect timing to do a new episode. So let's go ahead and get things started. First of all, let's do a couple of quick shout-outs really quick. First of all, Spanking G with Movie Mayhem. Great podcast. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. It's a really entertaining podcast. And Chucky's Playground, great place to be. If you haven't signed up, definitely check it out. Definitely join up. It's a really cool place to be. You can talk about anything Chucky related, non-Chucky related, whatever. You know, it's just a really awesome place to hang out. And now we will be getting to Saliva. And I sort of already talked about how I got into Saliva on a Drowning Pool episode that was done like a while back. I believe like January or February. But I sort of discovered Drowning Pool and Saliva like around the same time. Both of them played at WrestleMania 18, like I said in the Drowning Pool video. And out of the two bands at WrestleMania 18, I liked Saliva more. I don't know. I personally preferred Saliva more. They did Superstar, which was one of the theme songs for at WrestleMania, as well as Turn the Tables, which was their version of the Dudley Boys theme song. Which I think that's actually a really good theme song for the Dudley Boys. I believe Bubba Ray Dudley ended up using it when he went solo on the Raw brand for several months. I don't think they ever really used it as a team, really, or if they did, then I just don't remember. But yeah, so I really liked that song, and I ended up discovering more Saliva's music afterwards. Mainly through WWE, because WWE seemed to really love Saliva, like back in the day. You know, like they would use their music for a lot of events. They used Quick Quick Boom for, I believe, No Mercy 2001, and Superstar with WrestleMania, then Always for Survivor Series 2002. I think they used Survivor with the Sickest for Unforgiven 2004. Let's see. They use Ladies and Gentlemen for WrestleMania 23. I believe they used Family Reunion for some event. I can't remember which one. I think it was some event in 2009. I want to say it was like No Way Out 2009. I want to say that's what it was used for. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it might have been used for. And they used Time to Shine and Add Extreme Rules 2010. They may have used something from their 2011 album. I don't think they did, but who knows? I think they might have. So yeah, they use like a lot of music from them, you know, to the point where I kind of say that Saliva was really WWE's favorite band, because it's like at WrestleMania 19, you know, WWE said that, you know, WWE's favorite band in the whole world, Limp Bizkit. But I would argue that Saliva was more loved by WWE. Granted, Limp Bizkit sort of fell off the world. You know, they fell off. You know, like a couple years after that WrestleMania, they ended up breaking up. So Saliva's been around longer than them, really, but still, you know, they use a lot more stuff from them. You know, so I do kind of wish that they would start using bands like Saliva again, you know, because, you know, W's pay-per-view theme songs have just sucked. Like, it's either, like, really bad pop or rap or whatever, you know. I really miss the days where, you know, they would use, like, really good rock music for their pay-per-view themes. And this is something that NXT seems to get right, really, because the NXT, their latest one, they use Baby Metal's karate for one of their theme songs, and it was really good. Baby Metal was really awesome. Maybe I'll do a podcast on them one day. They also use A Day to Remember, which, A Day to Remember sucks in my opinion. Like, I cannot get into that band, honestly, but, that's just me, so, whatever. But anyway, this isn't a WWE podcast, this is a Saliva podcast, but, anyway, so let's try and get back on track here, but, that's how I discovered Saliva through WWE, so, yeah, long story short, Saliva and WWE, that's how I discovered Saliva. So I guess now, finally, after a lot of procrastination, let's go ahead and get to their first album, Saliva's first album. Now, a lot of people think that Every 6 Seconds is their first album. And while technically they're correct, their first album was actually released in 1997, and it was simply known as Saliva. It's an album that a lot of people might not know about, and for good reason, honestly, because it's a very minor album. It was an indie album, really. I think it ended up getting re-released in 2003 after the success of the first two albums, or the second and third album, really. But yeah, I don't know if I really dismiss this album in particular, because there actually are some pretty good songs on here. It has a bit of a darker vibe than their later ones. It's a much more raw album too. It's a lot heavier than what they would end up doing, in the mainstream once they achieve mainstream success. And there was also a couple songs on here that actually would end up getting re-recorded for Every 6 Seconds, specifically Greater Than, Less Than, and Beg, which is the first song on the album. And both of these are pretty good. I actually prefer this version of Greater Than, Less Than. It's a bit less polished, and it has a raw sound, It has a very Alice in Chains-esque kind of sound to it, especially in the chorus of that song. As far as Beg goes, I like the one on Every 6 Seconds more. I think it really fits that album just a little bit more. I mean, it's a very 90s laden record, which, considering it was released in 1997, not surprising there, but, it's really 90s sounding, especially songs like Sync and Call It Something. Like, you can tell that you're listening to an album from the late 90s, it just has that alternative, post-grunge kind of vibe, But this album, it's okay. Like, it's not really that good, but it's not really that bad either. It's perfectly fine. Like, I wouldn't recommend listen to this album. Like, you're not really missing a lot. But at the same time, there actually are some good songs on here that I would recommend. Like, Greater Than, Less Than is really good. Cellophane. I think, I think the second half of the album ends up being a bit of an improvement. The second half of the album is where things really pick up, and so if you want to listen to at least a few songs on here, I would probably recommend something like Greater Than, Less Than, Cellophane, Pincushion, stuff like that, Groovy, stuff like that, But, yeah, with this album, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you have some spare time lying around and you just want to listen to every Saliva album ever made, then go ahead and listen to it, So, if you have like about an hour to kill, this isn't a bad way to kill an hour. So I think this album it's okay. So then a few years passes, and we get to Every 6 Seconds. And this was their second album. This was released in 2001, and it was by far their breakthrough album. It's a really good album. I'm pretty sure it's their most successful album too. I'm not sure, but so yeah, this is this is an album where it has some of their most famous songs, specifically stuff like Superstar, Click Click Boom, Your Disease, just stuff like that. And this is a really good album too. I really like this album. It might be my favorite Saliva album. I don't know, like it's sort of a tie between this and another album that we'll talk about later on. But I really do like this album. This is their mainstream debut, I guess. It's their major label debut. I'll say that. Because this was released on Island Records, I believe. Yeah, Island Records. It was produced by Bob Marlette, who's produced a lot of like industrial kind of bands. He produced Alice Cooper's Brutal Planet and Dragontown albums. He produced the mixing of the UK bonus CD of Marilyn Manson's The Last Tour on Earth, which was his live album, and he's produced he produced Black Sabbath's tour album, whatever that was. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. It was Reunion. It was their reunion tour, and it was the 2 new studio songs that they put on there. And he also did a Quiet Riot album and Tony Iommi, and he's done a lot of things with and Il Nino and Shinedown and Cedar and stuff like that. So he's sort of in that like post grunge kind of world, His production really does play a part in Saliva's success, I think, because the production on here is really polished. Especially compared to the first album where it was really raw and kind of brooding and dark. This one, on the other hand, is pretty polished. I don't know if I'd say commercial necessarily, even though the songs I think are catchy, specifically Click Click Boom. But I do think that is a good song. And, I wouldn't say it's commercial at all necessarily. I wouldn't say it's pop, but some of the songs are catchy, and it does have that kind of polished production to it. So I think that really helps in its favor. And there's also some really cool songs like Fault Line, which is really good, Dope Ride, which is really awesome, and My Goodbyes, which is a really pretty good ballad. That probably goes on a bit longer than it should, but I do think that is really good. So overall, Every 6 Seconds is a really good Saliva album. If you have to listen to at least one Saliva album, I would probably make it this one. It's their most famous album, and it's their most famous for a reason, because it has some of their best songs on here. And so then we advance to about a year later, and we get Back Into Your System. And this was released in 2002. This one, I'm sort of mixed on this one, to be honest, because I really do want to love this album, and for the most part, I do like roughly half of the album. The thing about this album is that they sort of experiment a little bit more. With this album, it's a lot more melodic, really, and it's very, it is post grunge, whereas the Every 6 Seconds was a bit bordering on, new metal and stuff like that. This one is very much post grunge and more alternative, and this album features a lot more ballads than Every 6 Seconds did, which, it kind of works against it in that way, because even though some of the ballads on here are good, I feel like there's a bit too much of it. I feel like there's not enough like upbeat songs. And even some of the upbeat songs on it aren't really that good or memorable, but it does have its share of good songs. Like I think Always, which was like the real big single from that album, I think it's really good. Way of the World, I think, is a pretty good ballad. Raise Up, which is basically just a rehash of Click Click Boom, but I still think that's pretty good. And you have Rest in Pieces, which was co-written by Nikki Sixx and James Michael of 6 a.m. Yeah, that's I was thinking of Nikki Sixx's radio show, but yeah, and it does have a very 6 a.m. ish kind of vibe to it. Like 6 a.m. didn't exist at this time, but I could see a band like 6 a.m. doing a song like that, And Famous Monsters, which closes out the album, it's a pretty decent ballad as well. But I do think that is the problem with Back Into Your System. Even though I don't have a problem with bands experimenting or anything like that. But I do think it does get a bit over reliant on ballads and softer songs and stuff like that. So, I think this album is pretty solid. I mean, I like it more. I mean, I like it fine. I felt that every 6 seconds was a bit better though, but that's just me personally. So Back Into Your System, it's okay. I would say it's better than okay. It's not good, but it's not bad either. I would say it's a decent album. And so then a couple years passes, and we get Survival of the Sickest, and this was released in 2004. And honestly, with this album, I really like this album. I really thought this was a really great album. Because it basically fixes a lot of the problems that Back Into Your System had. And Back Into Your System had an overall reliance on ballads. And while this one does have a couple of ballads here and there, it's not the crux of the whole album, you know what I mean? For the most part, it's really very rock and upbeat kind of songs. Like the first song, which is Rock and Roll Revolution, it's really in your face. It starts off with this great guitar riff, and it just lets you know that's the kind of album it's going to be. Though there is a bit of a problem with this one. The lyrics here at least for the first few songs of the album, are pretty unoriginal and kind of goofy as well. Like the first few songs are basically about, living the rock star lifestyle and stuff like that. It's been done before and it doesn't really add anything new to it. But it didn't really ruin the album for me or anything like that. But it can be kind of goofy and unoriginal, and I can see why people would have a problem with that. But I think it overcomes that fault. I mean, it's just a really, rockin' album. I would dare say it's Saliva's heaviest album, which is probably why I like it so much, because I do like bands that really push the limit and stuff like that, and just go balls to the wall heavy metal and stuff like that. So I really do like this album. The title track is really good. Survival of the Sickest, No Regrets Volume 2. Razor's Edge is a pretty decent ballad, and it features Brad Arnold of Three Doors Down, and it's a pretty decent ballad. And Rock and Roll Revolution, Bait and Switch, One Night Only, even though those have like a bit unoriginal and silly lyrics, I do think that they work fine. I do really like this album, and it also features a bit more of a southern rock kind of vibe to it. I don't know, just some songs here just sort of have it. And it was something that kind of started back on the song Pride and on Back Into Your System. But it kind of gets a bit more into that southern rock style on here. So overall, there's not too much to say about Survival of the Sickest. It's a really good album. Like, if you really like a really brutal heavy metal and stuff like that, it's great. It's probably Saliva's heaviest album. So if you like heavy metal, definitely check this album out. And so then, taking a drink, by the way. Now, because I've been talking for a while, so I kind of need a drink. But anyway, the next album, a few years later, we get Bloodstained Love Story. And this was released in 2007. And with this album, it's sort of a similar style as Back Into Your System, which is it's an album that I really wanted to like, but I just cannot get into it. I mean, I don't know, like just something about this album kind of rubs me the wrong way in a way. Like I don't know, like I was sort of disappointed by this album. Basically, is what I'm trying to say because I was expecting sort of an album like Survival of the Sickness, really. Survival of the Sickest, really. Because, I heard Ladies and Gentlemen, which was the lead single of the album, and I was expecting, like, really loud, heavy metal and stuff like that. Even the second single, Broken Sunday, which was a bit more downbeat, but it was still an upbeat kind of song. I know that makes no sense, but in mid-tempo, I guess you could say. And I thought that song was good as well. So I was really expecting it to be like that. But that's not really what we got at all. Like, most of the album, it's mainly just like... It's basically the same thing that Back Into Your System was. Just basically melodic ballads, which I don't really have a problem with. But I think it's, like, it is like an over-reliance on it, you know what I mean? But it does have its moments. I do think that King of the Stereo is pretty good, and Ladies and Gentlemen, Broken Sunday. And then you got Black Sheep, which features John 5 on guitar, and that's probably the best one out of all of it. It's probably the heaviest song on the album, really. So, it does have its moments, but it's really too far and too few in between, So, I mean, personally, I was just, I don't know, I was just kind of disappointed by this album, honestly. I don't know if I'd say it's their worst one, though it's probably up there. So I didn't really care much for this album. And then we go a year later, and we get Cinco Diablo. And this was released in 2008. And this one, I sort of had low expectations for, especially after Bloodstained Love Story. But I actually do really like this one. I do think that this is a pretty good album. I do not like the album cover though. Like an ultrasound baby giving the devil horns. Like that's really silly. Like like that's like a cover that Spinal Tap would do. You know what I mean? Like it's a really silly album cover. But anyway, this is a really good album, though there is a bit of a problem with it. Okay, Hunt You Down was the theme song in No Way Out. Okay, I thought it was Family Reunion, but it was actually Hunt You Down. Okay, but anyway, there is a bit of a problem with this album, though. The fact that even though it is a good album, while you're listening to it, it's still kind of forgettable in a way. I don't know, like, there's a couple songs on here that I do remember, like Family Reunion and How Could You. I think those are the best songs on here. But other than those two, there's not... These songs don't really have much staying power, really, even though it is good. I don't know, I just don't really remember a ton about this album. Really, even right after you listen to it, you don't really remember that much, which might be a bit of a problem. But I do think this is a good album. There's not much to really say about it, but I do think this is a good album. I think it's way better than Bloodstained Love Story. It really does follow kind of that Survival of the Sickest kind of route, where it's mostly upbeat rockers, and there's very few ballads on here and stuff like that. It's a really good album, albeit a bit forgettable. So I would probably recommend it, but I wouldn't expect to remember anything shortly after listening to it, because it is kind of forgettable. And so then we go to Under Your Skin, and this was released in 2011. And this was also the last album to feature Josie Scott as the singer, and Josie Scott was the singer for a really long time, and ended up leaving shortly after the album was released. And he said that he was going to do a Christian music career, which, like when I first heard that, I was like, that sounds kind of weird. But when you listen to stuff that Saliva did, especially on stuff like Bloodstained Love Story, and even this album, Under Your Skin, it actually does kind of make sense, because it really seemed like the writing and the songs were really sort of going more, I guess, a softer kind of vein, more ballady, stuff like that. A lot of ballads and stuff like that. So I'm not too surprised by it. So, Under Your Skin, I don't know how to feel about this album, it's really like a mixed bag for me, I don't know. Like, Better Days, I think, is okay. Nothing is really terrible. Like, especially the chorus. Oh my god, that's terrible. Like, it might be like the worst song they've ever done, in my opinion. Like, I just could not get into that song. Like, it's terrible. Hate Me is okay. Never Should Let You Go is pretty solid. It's a pretty decent ballad. Prove Me Wrong, Toxic Suicide, Turn the Lights Off, stuff like that. And what I do find is that the second half of the album is a lot better. It sort of goes that self-titled record kind of vibe, in which case the first half isn't really that good, but the second half is way better. So, I don't know. This album, a really mixed bag for me, personally. It's okay. It does sort of admittedly go towards that Cinco Diablo vibe, in which case the album isn't quite memorable. I mean, I do think that it is a bit more memorable than Cinco Diablo is, but not by much, So personally, I didn't really care much for this one. And so Josie Scott ended up leaving shortly afterwards, and they ended up getting a new singer, Bobby Amaru. And this is where we get both In It to Win It and Rise Up. And I'm going to be talking about both of those albums at the same time. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they are the exact same albums. They are the exact same albums. The only difference is that Rise Up has a different name, a different album cover, and it excludes 3 songs. Other than that, it's the same album. And, like, I don't know why they did that. Like, it is just so weird. But, so anyway, In It to Win It and Rise Up, basically the same album. I do think that this is a good album. I do think that it is an improvement upon Under Your Skin. I do think that this is a good one. You can tell that they have more energy here. Like, you can tell that they're having more fun than they've had in a long time. They do sound renewed, And you can hear it on songs like Animal and Singing Sure Hide Crazy and stuff like that. In It to Win It, stuff like that. Redneck Freak Show is pretty good, although maybe it's just me, but the bridge of that song, it really sounds like Alice Cooper's School's Out. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it is like a blatant rip-off. But, yeah, there's like a lot of songs on here that are really good, have a lot of fire to them, a lot of energy to them, and it's a pretty cool group. Pretty cool album. I'm not going to say, albums, because they're the same album. But, yeah, I do think this is a good album. Good pair of albums, So, yeah, they are pretty good. And the new singer's voice, I do think that he does fit the band. There's hints of Josie Scott's style in his voice sometimes, but it never becomes, like, distracting. And it's never a case where the guy is very obviously trying to sound like the original singer. That's my problem with modern day Creams right nowadays, because the new singer is so obviously trying to sound like Jeff Tate. It's unbelievable. And I do think that his style does fit the band, so it's not a case like Drowning Pool, where the new guy really doesn't fit the band at all. I think he fits fine in the band. I think Joey Scott is a better singer. I think he's a better frontman. But and it's not quite the same without him. But I do think that the new singer is a pretty good singer in his own right. And so then we go towards the new album that was just released today, and that is Love, Lies, and Therapy. And, I was really looking forward to this album because, I haven't heard a new Saliva album in quite a while, so I didn't really know what to expect. But I really do like this album. I really do. I do think that this is a good album. I really like this one, and there's a lot of great songs on here. You got a really cool mid-tempo ballad like "Tragic Kind of Love," which is really good. And there's even a cover of Michael Jackson's "They Don't Care About Us," which is really a really cool cover. And I was not expecting it to be on the album. I didn't really know the track listing of the album until I listened to it. Really good album. There's a lot of great songs on here. RX is really cool. It's really cool. Just songs like that. It sort of has that similar sound like Rise Up and In It to Win It and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's also sort of something. They also sort of experiment a little bit more. There's a couple more ballads on here, but it's not lame ballads like there are on Bloodstained Love Story or Under Your Skin or anything like that. They actually sound like they have heart behind it. Sounds like they're actually putting effort into it, and it's not forgettable or anything like that. So I do think that Love, Lies, and Therapy is a really good album. And honestly, I would probably dare say it's their best in Survival of the Sickest. So I really like this album. I definitely recommend it. So that is all for this episode on Saliva. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.